So this was the last class we added, utility character DB, and we're going to go on and add another utility class, which we're going to call utility string. So I'm not going to show you how to do that again because you know how to do that a lot. So I've added the class and I've called it utility string. I'm going to go into my space here, MH tab. So I've added the header information, utility string, little typo there. You'll remember that in the application that we have to build, when we looked at the assignment brief, it said that we had to do several things with the strings that we've got to go. We've got to make a username. That's perhaps the factory element of it, where we take a component of the people's name, convert it, and then add a random number. And then there's also the thing that we have to make things lowercase. And then we have a reversing procedure, which that's the pretend encryption that we're going to apply. So I've got the code on the clipboard as usual. So I'm going to just paste that in and go through it one by one. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is to reverse a string. So the code here is for reversing a string. And it's actually quite clever because we're using what's called an array. And you'll understand arrays. We've battered them to death for the test. But an array is a collection, an ordered collection, which we can use the elements to reference each letter in the array, or each element in the array, really. It can be elements, it can be letters, numbers, objects, classes themselves. So there is a built-in procedure, reverse array. So you first have to get your string, turn it into an array of characters, which is here. Then we simply call array reverse. What? Reverse the array. Then return what we get from that particular process. So that's really good. So that's a very built-in feature. Now the code here has 3 lines, and I can remember when I was taught in order to reverse an array it would have been 20 or 30, right? No, maybe not as many. 15 or 16 lines I think was the kind of the size of it. So things have got better, absolutely, significantly better. So that's the first element of this particular set of utilities that we can use, and we can just call them. It's a static method, as you can see here. We've got the static keyword. That means we can create it, it stays in memory, it's put in there at compile time. Just call it. You don't have to make it, call it. Right, okay, then we go to the next one, which is making a username. Now, making a username requires that we have a forename and a surname. And if you can remember, the forename and surname are used in a particular format, which is very common in computing, very common in account management, where you have to have a particular pattern to validate that a user is a person who belongs to an organization. And it not only gives you a unique username in terms of you have something that nobody else has, it will also mean that you could form check it. You could see, does that shape work for what we said are the rules? And here we have the rules that we have here. So the first thing we're going to do, is we're going to have a string, empty, which we're going to use for manipulation. Then we're going to use a try catch, which is really, really, really good. So we've got a problem here, as you can see, with message box, user helper, using system Windows, and that fixes that straight away, and it's now in the set of using statements, directives that we've got. So, sorry, I've got too far. So we're going to have public string make username. We need a string to play with. Then we're going to set the range for our random numbers, and you may remember this from the assignment, 1000 to 9999. And then we trim to make sure there's no spaces been accidentally added in the string that we get from the user interface. And then we add the first initial by taking a substring. Now a substring is a way of parsing out or slicing out the bits of a string, and the command here says, okay, what we do is we're taking this empty string, we're going to add to it, starting at 0 because it's effectively an array, the first letter. Yeah, so that's what we do, and we then do the same again and keep trimming, and then we add the random number. Pretty straightforward stuff, so it's really good and it works really well, and we get the username in the shape that we want. So we actually did the 2 functions or methods at the bottom of the particular code set that we've got, because I thought the two at the top were actually fairly standard, and you should understand those without any difficulty at all. The first one is called random number as a string. Now, a string is something that we're going to be using in the interface, and so we use that as a convenience, treat everything as strings and then work with them as we need to. So there's a built-in thing called random. Yeah, it's a new random, so I'm saying I want a random, I'm going to call it random, and I've set the limits of lower and upper, and then just return it to string. So it's very, very straightforward and doesn't demand a lot of explanation at all, really. So that's that one, built using a built-in function called random. And then we've got trim and lower. You remember that what we've got to do is we've got to make sure that everything in the username is lowercase. So we make sure that we can do that by using, once again, a built-in set of features that we get inside Visual Studio, Visual C#, sorry. So what's trim? Trim is just making sure that if somebody puts in a space character at the beginning or the end of a particular string, it's removed so that it's not processed as an additional character. Dead easy, really. So you take a string in, my string, what a string to work with, trim it, takes off the leading and trailing edge spaces, then just return it. Dead straightforward. You should understand that without any problem at all.